Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS, Paul here. In today's video, I want to share 5 reasons why I think that the TCG and the OCG should merge. So what do I mean by that? Well, the TCG and the OCG, for those who don't know, are kind of like 2 different versions of the same game of Yu-Gi-Oh! The OCG is the way the game is played in Asian territories or really just Japan, and then the TCG is how the game works pretty much everywhere else, you know, here in the United States, Canada, the UK, South America, all of that. So the problem, or we'll say the issue at hand here, is that in the OCG, they have different ban lists, different pack releases, and packs come out sooner for them than they do for us. So, you know, whereas we're about to get Extreme Force is already launched in the OCG, and Flames of Destruction will be launching soon. That's the set afterwards, and then, you know, like so on and so forth. So in the OCG, cards come out sooner. And in addition to all of those differences, we also have different releases of cards in these sets. So like an OCG main series set like Extreme Force will have 80 cards in it, whereas a TCG one will have 100 cards in it. And we'll get some TCG exclusives, you've probably heard that term thrown around. And we'll also get some OCG imports of like existing older OCG cards that we didn't have before. And they'll also get different sets like the popular Link Vrains box that's caused so much controversy. They'll get that type of stuff in the OCG, and we won't necessarily get that same pack. And we don't necessarily know when we'll get it or what will be in it, because sometimes cards change from pack to pack release. Like in the OCG, it might have a reprint of Ash Blossom in it, and here in the TCG, we just might not get that. And people would be angry, and that's happened a lot. That even goes for like starter and structure decks. So you can see why this is a bit of a contentious issue. I think that in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the OCG and the TCG, that distinction basically shouldn't exist. I think that the cards, the packs, the ban lists, the release dates, everything should be parallel, come out at the same time. So here are the reasons why I think so. Reason number 1, Link Monsters. You might have heard of them. They are the new kids on the block, and they're in a bit of what I would call a crisis right now, or at least a growing pain. So Link Monsters are pretty cool. A lot of people didn't like them at first, and now people are beginning to get on the train of liking Link Monsters. But the problem that you'll notice is that Link Monsters still right now are very boring, and so as a result feel very forced. Like your deck just kind of has to use them to keep up, just, you know, as maintaining protocol rather than actually starting combos or really advancing your game state. You just have to make, say, Decode Talker so you can do stuff, or Mrs. Radiant if your deck can use it. So, yeah, right now Link Monsters, that's kind of boring. The only exciting ones are maybe like Firewall because it's involved in a lot of OTKs. The thing is, in the OCG, they got Link Vrains box, and as you guys know, that introduces some really powerful Link monsters, Heavy Metal Foes Electrum, Crystron Needle Fiber, those types of cards. The Burning Abyss, you know, Link monster, and the Heretic Link monster, and the Qliphort Link monster, Shaddolls, Gym Knights, all these cool different decks that get Link monsters that they can use to really like advance their strategies, move their games forward. They have beneficial arrows, they're easy to make, they enable combos and extensions and protection, and it's all really cool. Thing is, we don't know when we're gonna get some of that stuff in the TCG, and that really sucks, because it's like we want to use these Link monsters and these decks want to be able to play with them, but they can't because you just don't know when the cards will release. For example, I'm really interested in playing Rockets, and recently the Reloader Dragon, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's a new like Rocket Link monster that's a lot easier to use than Borreload Dragon and still triggers your Rocket monster's effects. It came out in the OCG, or is it coming out in the OCG as some set that like I don't know what it's called, and I don't know when that's gonna come to the TCG. And I'll never know until it gets announced. So that really sucks for people who wanna use these decks and wanna use these cards. You don't really get a choice. So that's one reason why I think they should get merged. Reason number 2 is ban lists. So like I said, the TCG and the OCG have very different ban lists, and it's actually quite different. Like their ban lists come at different times than our ban lists. For example, they're getting a new one on January 1st, 2018. We're getting a new one, who knows when. And in addition to that, they take different ban list like ideologies, I feel, with theirs. So, you know, you'll see them take a more harsh approach to hitting a deck if it's like been really dominant. Or like, you know, Zodiacs, for example, got that treatment. Or even like Shaddolls and Mermails back in the day, you know, lots of things getting banned. In the TCG though, we tend to be a little bit more conservative. We don't hit cards like ban, 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 limit, limit, limit. It's more like we'll, you know, limit a couple of things, semi-limit a couple of things, and kind of like see how it goes. I'm not saying that one approach is better or worse, but I am saying it would be nice if they were the same, because a lot of players like to keep up with the OCG as a way to kind of follow the meta and see where it's going. If new cards are going to be released and they're winning in the OCG right now, then it stands to reason that they'll also be dominant in the TCG, so that can give you a good indication of what cards to invest in or what cards to avoid. The problem though is that, you know, if a deck is dominant in the OCG, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be strong in the TCG, because they usually have a completely different ban list that might have different, you know, support cards for an archetype available for them, like Elemental Hero Stratos, for example, popular one, or even just different staples. You know, certain things will be at 3 in the OCG, and here we have like Book of Moon at 1 and things like that. So it's a real divide that I don't think really needs to exist, because for my third reason, Worlds, this all kind of crumbles anyway. So yeah, reason number 3 is when we go to Worlds at the end of the summer, that's where each country or a division gets a certain amount of players who like did well at their nationals and they play against each other. They have to use this kind of combined custom ban list that takes the TCG into account and the OCG into account, and then like TCG exclusives aren't allowed to be played, and then certain stuff that's out in the OCG can't be played, and it's just really complicated and confusing, and I don't think that that's really necessary, because it makes for this unique format that will never be played again, really. So I think that, you know, that it would make it easier to travel and play against people in Japan. If a Japanese player comes to the States and wants to play in a YCS, then if these formats were the same and all the products were the same, this wouldn't be a problem. But as it is now, that's a complete flippity flop of everything. And, you know, that's even led to some problems that, like, you know, include things like pricing. Like if a card's banned in the OCG, then it wouldn't really have much of a price there, but if it's allowed in the TCG, then it might still be expensive here. And if you're like crossing between territories, you can see where that would be a really big issue. So I think that literally the cross-country like camaraderie would be better if we were actually playing the same game. Reason number 4 is parallel products. So like I said before, the OCG gets packs before we do, about 3 months before we do. And that's useful for knowing like leaks, like, okay, cool, this card's gonna be allowed in the TCG soon, or like this is what's gonna be coming out. But the product parallels suck when it comes to things that aren't main series sets, where you don't know when something's coming out. Like the example of the Rocket Monster, there's plenty of those. I mean, Frightfur Patchwork, for example, that's one that Fluffle players have wanted for ages. We still have no indication of when that's coming out. And it sucks when you play an archetype and you see a new support card for that archetype. Like right now, those would be things like the Rockets, things like Trickstars and Altergeist, those anime archetypes where they're getting some cool new card, but it's not coming in Extreme Force, it's not coming in Flames of Destruction, it's coming in some jump level up pack in the OCG that doesn't exist for us, and so we just have to wait and hope it becomes a TCG like import into another set, but you'll never know when or like how or in what kind of way. So I think it'd be a lot easier to just follow all of that if it was on the same track. And it really sucks when, you know, different products get changed, like the Pendulum Evolution starter deck, or in the OCG it was a starter deck, here it became a set. And it was really awkward because Pendulum Evolution, like all the cards were really easy to get because like everything was like an ultra rare in that set, or like an ultra and super, and literally buying a box got you like 2 or 3 copies of all the Magician cards. So it's like, why wasn't this just a structure deck where we could just buy 3 copies and get all the things we needed? So people get really angry about that. Like sometimes the TCG will change sets, and the bigger problem that a lot of people have is changing rarities, where a card in the OCG will be like a super rare, and then when it comes down to TCG, it's like you know, a secret rare, and then like the price gets hiked up really high because like, you know, an Ash Blossom that could have cost $5 or $10 now costs like, you know, 50, 100, depending on the time. So I think that if the products were parallel, that would be a really good thing for the game. It's something that really would benefit everyone. I don't see any downsides to that. And last but not least, players will be able to play strong support for their decks when it's available. This might sound redundant at this point, but like I said, Rockets, Frightfurs with Frightfur Patchwork, Trickstars, they have a new Link monster they don't know when they'll get. Altergeist, same story. All these decks, it sucks when you play a deck and you know that it's getting a new support card and you just don't know when that support card will come out in the TCG. Again, with Link Vrain's box, that's a big problem for, say, a Gem Knight player, say a Shaddoll player who wants these cards to come out now so they can play their deck and they don't have to do it on WIGO Pro, but there's just no telling when these cards will come out and in what rarity. So for what price? That's a big issue. I think if these two things were merged, if the OCG and the TCG just basically both coexisted, there wouldn't be so much need to, you know, worry and be angry, like, because there's so much animosity when players are like, where's Fight for Patchwork? Why isn't this out yet? Where's the new whatever support? Where's the new whatever support? And then combined with all the other things I've said, like having the products release at the same time and having the ban list be the same, the meta becomes much more predictable, investments become much safer, the game probably could be cheaper, and just all in all more enjoyable. So, you know, that's the really big takeaway here, is I think that players would just have an easier time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! If these two things were the same. So those are my thoughts. I think that the TCG and the OCG need to link up as soon as possible. It'd literally be great if this could happen like on January 1st. Obviously it won't. And obviously I know that there are like lots of legal reasons, legal differences and licensing issues that, you know, cause cards to not be releasable and stuff. Maybe they want to do things as like a testing ground, like, okay, we'll release in the OCG and then if it does well there, then maybe we can choose how we release. That's great, but I think things would just be a lot simpler if we were playing the same game. So that's it for the discussion. What do you guys think? Do you agree? I think that most people would, but I mean, you know, what reasons maybe can this not happen? What do you think? What would be some of the problems if it did? I'd like to know all that. Let me know down in the comments. And yeah, that's it. I've gone on long enough. So remember, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. And of course, thumbs if you like the video, sub if you love the video, make sure you enable notifications. And that is gonna be it. I'll see you guys in the next one.